Hello everybody and welcome back. Today we're going to be working on forms. Forms are something we see a lot in most applications really. When's the last time you wrote something that wasn't a CRUD app? So today we're going to look at some, we're going to continue working on the DevSpace website, and we're going to look at one of their forms and go ahead and do some work on improving the accessibility of it and improving just general form structure of it. So let me cut over to the code. There we go. So what we have, just a quick reminder, this is what the website looked like. This is the form we're going to be working on. However, kind of general, this is what the actual website looks like. Let's just go ahead and take a peek. We have, we've worked in the past episodes, which I'm kind of behind on getting them uploaded on YouTube, but I do have a number of them on my YouTube channel, so feel free to check those out. I've been a little slow because trying to get everything captioned is taking a hot second, but we have our home page, which we've gone ahead and done. We have our sessions and our speakers, and then the other piece we've done is make sure that everything was nice and responsive so that when you were on mobile, you had something that worked nicely. So what we're going to work on today is this form right here that we're going to go ahead and obviously we're going to make sure that the layout is consistent with what we have in other places, right? In our home page, we have our main section and our sidebar. We're going to go ahead and instate that there, and then we're going to do some work on the form itself. So to get our page kind of looking a little bit better, I'm going to start with getting the layout fixed up, and then we'll get digging into the code of the actual form itself, which is right here. So the first thing is, if we look at one of our other pages, so let's take the home page for example. If you do our index.html, in order to what's up with up there's the version that takes Markdown. What do you mean there's a version that takes Markdown? I didn't say anything about Markdown, but I'm sure we could put a, we could totally put an input field that takes Markdown. That'd be pretty cool. There's a bunch of libraries out there. It'd be pretty easy. Yeah, so let's take and redo our layout really quick. Of course, I can't remember what classes we used, so we'll have to check that. If always I'll always to use the Markdown for the bio and live display. Yeah, we can do something like that. That'd be super cool. Has the preview. Yeah, right now I'm not running on the API, so I don't have any info coming in. So that's why it's like if I go in here, because the API is giving me a CORS error, so I just basically bypassed, went directly to the page, pulled up the page, which we'll definitely want to put something about not letting you just randomly open that page. But if I go over to the console, I'm getting CORS errors. So anything we type in right now, we're not going to get to preview anyway because nothing's loading anything. We might be able to work around it really quick, but alright, so back to getting that. Or it should be pretty easy to get a Markdown thingy in there with the preview and everything. It'd be pretty swank. Alright, we need a content. How did I do this last time? We have the aside, and we have our body. I know it's not just on body. I do remember that much. There's the menu. That's the conference info. I think it's just it's the main. Yeah, we have that container in the main. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to give a div class equals container with our main. And inside our main is we're gonna put this entire section here. So I'm gonna just collapse it. Go ahead and grab that, bring it up into our main, and then we're gonna take our aside And that should take our styles like we've done. That should take our styles just fine since we did those globally. So I'm going to go ahead. No, VS Code, what are you doing? I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. Let's start with that. Okay. Preview is all local. Ooh, cool. That we'll definitely try to make that work then. All right. So we have, let's refresh, do a hard refresh. Now we have our layout like we want it. So now we can actually work on that form. Let's see if the preview does work. Sweet. So we'll definitely want to pretty that up. So if I do things like this, nice, and it's taking our styles beautifully. Let's see if it takes a table. Now I'm just geeking out, but let's see if it takes a table. If I can remember how to do a table. I think I should probably give it some white space. There we go. No, it's definitely not doing a table. Interesting. Maybe we can, I don't know that we necessarily want tables in our bio, but it's always a fun one to check into. Okay, cool. So let's look back at our form. So the first thing when oh, that's the index, that's not the profile. There we go. So if I go into expand, there we go. If I go into the form and I look at these input fields, we have the display name, we have the email address, profile picture, etc. What we have is an input that has no label associated with it. Because as much as there's a header, which can loosely visually get interpreted as the label right here, right? This is our header and this is our input field. So it gets loosely interpreted as our header visually. From a programmatic standpoint, what this means is I have a section, I have a section, I have a section, and so on and so forth, without actually providing any kind of context for what this input actually is. So I'm going to pull the profile up because that's the name of our page. I'm going to pull that up. That's our main content or for this section. This error message, oops, not what I meant to do. Click happy today. This error message, the first thing I'm going to do is make this a div. And in order for it to, and we'll give it a class error, and we can style it however we want. And we may already have a class for that. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and remove it. And then we're going to, because we'll handle that via, we're going to handle that via hidden, which we have a class for, and which basically just hides it. It does something similar. I mean, I'm going to give it a role equals alert, because anytime an error does pop up here, we want to make sure that the user gets notified immediately. So visually speaking, we'll have a big fat here you have an error, but this means that by putting it as a role alert, screen readers will know that, hey, this is important. So from a visual standpoint right now, we haven't changed much of anything at all. We still have our H1, we still have our input fields and our label. Then we're going to go and fix, we have this article. We're actually going to make this a form, as it should be. Forms are forms. Let's make sure they're actually forms. Let's go find the closing tag for the article. There it is. Form. This is the preview with the abstracts and stuff, so we'll deal with that in a minute. And then now let's deal with the individual fields. So instead of an H2 here, we're going to make this a label, as it should be. Now there's two ways that we can associate this input and this label. We can nest the input inside of the label. So I can do this. And this will associate them correctly in terms of the accessibility of it. Or I can add I can add an ID to the input text and do a for. So the way that would look is, hold on, let's fix that. The way that would look if I did it via the ID, so this is the input and its label, right? We're going to keep them together. We would do, so ID equals display name. Now we need to make sure to keep our IDs unique. And then we would say for equals display name. Right. So we also know that display name is going to be required, right? You can't not have a display name. So we're going to add an ID of, we're going to add a tag of required, or an attribute of required for this. My guess is it also has a max length before the DB crashes, which we'll probably need to find out what that is in order for it to go ahead and add that. That way we don't war and peace the thing, right? If you accidentally copy paste something you didn't intend to, we want to go ahead and prevent that. So if I save this, you'll see that it's actually changed our styles at that point, because we do have styles on our header, right? And we do, but now, as we can see, our input and our label work the same. The thing to keep in mind here is that using, a lot of times what we'll see, and I'll do this on this email address one here really quick, and then we'll talk about why this is bad. I could do something like a placeholder equals email address. And now what you will see is that it will show up here, and it kind of acts as if you had a label. The problem is there's two really big problems with that. Let me hide what's our header that is serving as our label at the moment. The big problem here is that, one, once I start typing in here, why won't it let me type? Oh, that's interesting. It's not letting me type. Oh, it's read only. Of course it's read only. I'm gonna undo this read only really quick, so that we can actually type. I start typing, I now don't know, I have no reference for what this field was supposed to be. And that's why we want to keep a label. The other reason being assistive technologies don't do well with placeholders. So you can add a placeholder, so if you, as a hint to help the user understand what's going on in that field possibly, or in the case of a, say you're asking for a product number or something, to give them the format as a kind of a hint situation. But we can't really use it for much other, in the context of it actually being it's not a replacement for label. That's where I'm going with this. So let's make that let's go ahead and make that a label. And label. There we go. Does this one already have an ID or not? No, it does not. I'm gonna take out this placeholder, give it an ID equals email address. And then I'm going to change I'm going to add the read only back on there. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to a type email, because that again gives back that semantic meaning of what that input is for. We have a type email, might as well use it. So now when I save this, we have our nice email address in our display name. Let's continue to the profile picture. Now the profile picture in this particular case is asking for a URL. It's asking for a hosted picture. We're not doing a profile like a picture upload. We're trying to get yeah, I got that read only back on there again. We're trying to get the URL to a hosted pic. So we need to make that clear to the user. So what we're going to do is we're going to change that H2 to a label, as it should be, because we're in form land. I'm going to separate these out. We're going to give it a type. Now, I don't remember for sure, but I think there's such a thing as a type URL. So let's double check. Input types, HTML. I don't remember them all. There's been a lot of new ones. Here's the entire list of things that you can use: button, checkbox, color, date to date, time, local, email, file, hidden, image, month, number, password, radio, range, reset, search, submit, tell, text, time, URL, and week. So there is in fact a URL. So that's what we're going to use. So we're going to say a type URL. Now the cool thing is, unless on your form you set a no validate, it'll actually validate for you. Freestyle Color just tells us that for anyone watching, the email is read-only because it's used as to salt the password. So email and password have to be set at the same time. Yeah. So which is all his realm, not mine. This is awesome. I just make it look good. So we forgot our 4 on the email address. Hold on. Important safety tip. Yes. 4 equals email address. There we go. So now we're going to say, we're going to give it a type URL. So what I was going with the types is like email and type, unless you set a no validate for your form in some browsers, Chrome, for example, it will actually validate that for you. So if I try to type garbage here, we put it back to read only. If I try to type garbage, we will see that this is actually invalid if I tried to submit the form. And we will, it's not giving me an input invalid, which is interesting on the URL. Oh, because I didn't refresh. Refreshing is good. All right, now let's try. I have to see what kind of validation it has. Email definitely has validation. Why is it showing type text? Oh, we need to save the file. Save file, refresh page. Now do the thing. Now go over here. Let's see if it actually, interesting. Let's see, does it actually validate? Let's go to the MDN. I like the MDN better. MDN, input type URL. Let's see if it's got validation attached to it. Value, events, methods. Input values automatically validated to ensure that it's either empty or a properly formatted URL before it can be submitted. Okay. With the class valid and valid, which is why we like it, because we can use with pseudo classes, which is cool. So maybe it's considering this as a valid URL somehow. So let me add some garbage that would definitely not be valid in a URL. Let's get creative. Something's got to give there. All right. Still not. Interesting. We did give it a type URL. All right, we'll find out. I'll have to look a little bit closer into that. Let's continue associating our labels and our inputs. The ID equals profile picture. And I try to keep my IDs pretty descriptive of what they're on. That way it's easier not to duplicate them. Now we do have another form on this page right here. Email, first name, last name. So we need to make sure that whatever ID we used here, let's find out what ID we used here. We used an ID of, it's got MC email. So we're good there. So we do not need to worry about that. And we do not have any other forms there. Okay, we're good. But we need to make sure that we're not, so a lot of times in this case, since it's related to the profile, instead of just email address, it would be a little bit safer to say profile email address. That way we're sure that, hey, which email address are we talking about and where did it come from, and we're not conflicting with another ID on the page, for example. Let's keep going. Okay, so Twitter, website, blog, bio, these are all, so where's bio? That's the actual bio, that's the bio preview, okay. So these 3, Twitter, website, and blog, are input fields for social media typey things. So this is actually a good place where we can say, for example, I'm doing H2 like social media profiles, for example, and then we can go ahead and say label. Now, at Freestyle Coder for Twitter, are you looking for the full URL, or are you looking for the @ and then the URL? And then the profile, do you remember? I'm going to say for Twitter type. We'll find out if we get an answer and ID equals Twitter. Okay. The other thing we can do here, instead of doing a header, is we can actually do a field set. Now, field set are pretty cool. They're a little bit of a pain to restyle, but they're very clear as to what's going on. We can do a field set, and those are actually I'll use oftentimes for what's it called? For radio buttons, for example, or check boxes. They're really good for that. And use social media profiles, and then we could put that in there. In this particular case, either way would work. I mean, that's a personal preference at that point. I just want to kind of show you. Can you please copy? I just got a new computer and I can't, my fingers are not, with the keyboard and everything, are not playing nice with me today. Got to relearn those keyboard shortcuts. So this is what that field set, this is how we get this thing. So it really nicely encompasses to say, hey, anything in this box, and then we can restyle however we please, but anything in this box actually belongs to this group of things. So that's one way we can group fields by their type or by what they're used for and those sorts of things. So let's go ahead and put, we have the Twitters. Let's not duplicate Twitter. Let's add home. There we go. Let's add website. Let's go ahead and move website and blog in there. And go ahead and fix those fields as well. Let's just say no. Yes, that. Shift tab. Go ahead and format that correctly. Formatting in HTML and keeping things nice and formatted is incredibly helpful in making sure that all of the tags are closed, which is quite helpful for, closing tags is important because they'll have weird behavior if you don't. We have our website. That's definitely going to be a URL. And we can even say, and then we have our blog. Let's go ahead and associate it. For equals website, double quotes. Website. And ID equals website. Now, none of these fields are particularly required, so we don't need to add that. We'll probably want to add a max length to all of these as well. And then we'll do a label. And type, blog is probably going to be a type URL. And then we'll do ID equals blog. There we go. Label equals for equals blog. There we go. And so that concludes our field set. And if I save that and we refresh, we now have our 3 social media profile-y typey things in there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and restyle that. And we're going to make that pretty because it's all right, but it's not great. So let's go. Do we have a profile CSS? We do not. So we'll put it in the main. That's okay. It's kind of related to fields. It's kind of related to forms anyway. And we do have form things in here. If I just look for input, here's our input text area selects. all that fun stuff. So we're going to add, with our other form things, we're going to add field set. And for the field set, what I want to do is I want to get rid of this line. And I want to just add this, I want to take this legend and go ahead and put it at the same, I want to justify it with everything. Visually speaking, I just want it to look like a header and inputs, but programmatically it'll nice and group them. So I'm going to say in the margin and padding on field sets is dumb and a pain in the butt to remove because it's not the margin and padding we're used to. If we look over here, I'm going to blow this up just a little bit. You'll see that it's not margin and padding normal, it's margin inline and padding block and padding inline. And that's what makes it a little bit of a pain in the butt to go ahead and figure out how to do. Then your border is normal. But then it's margin inline and padding block. So in order to get rid of all that, I need to do a border, none, margin, inline, none, padding, block. And I might actually need to do those as 0 and not none. We'll find out. Yeah, those need to be 0, not none. So these are going to be 0 and 0. Okay, so we got rid of some of the things, right? We still have our padding inline. So I need to get rid of the padding inline. 0. Overwrite that. All right, we're now aligned left to right. So now our last piece is dealing with this legend, right, for our field set. And we essentially want our legend to look just like our H2 basically. So I'm going to go find the styles we set to H2. That's our call to action H2, speaker card H2. We just assigned it a color. That's it. All right. So it's accent color. We'll have to style it. Okay, that's fine. I lost our inputs. Where's the inputs? There's the inputs. So there's our field set. And with our field set, we're going to put our legend. And we're going to say, we're definitely going to give it the color. Var accent. And then we're going to say font weight bold and font size 1.25. Let's look at what that looks like without the extra semicolon. That's starting to look pretty nice. A little big on the font size, and we definitely want to give some breathing room between the legend and the first label. So we're going to say 0625, and then we're going to add some margin bottom. Let's say 1 rem. And now we are, 1 rem might be a little much, although it's not too bad. It's not too bad. I'm going to close this really quick, give us a little nice better overview. I am going to give some margin to the top of the field set to kind of, or around the field set to separate it a little bit more. So we're going to just say margin, the one we're used to, margin 1 rem 0. Kind of separate it out from the rest of the stuff. Okay. Did it take it? It's just not pronounced. Oh, I did margin bottom. We want a margin 1 rem. Oh, that's our, no, this was correct. That's our legend. 1 rem. Let's do 2. Maybe it was just not quite enough. That's better. So now it's nice and separated from the rest. So now we can deal with our bio. So bios in this particular case is pretty cool because as we can see here, it's a markdown field and we can do the markdown. So I can do a header. We were playing that with that earlier. And I can do lists. And I can do, you know, I can even do links. And pair, so if I remember well on the link, I think it's this way. I can never remember which way it goes. Other way around. It's bracket, then it's home. Now, generally speaking, when people tell me they want markdown fields, I'm like, yeah, sweet, absolutely no problem. But I usually encourage them to have a toolbar to insert the markdown. But for this is a technical conference, and this is specifically the speaker profile for a technical conference. So I don't necessarily think it's massively necessary. You're dealing with a group of people that are already really tech savvy to begin with. So, All right, so we need to style this a little bit. Let's look at what our field looks like and go from there. So in this case, so we finished our field set. Having a header here is perfectly acceptable, and we do have a text area. That's cool. And then we have the preview. Okay. So let's give some, if you change here, change in speaker HTML, bio. We do have the profile, which I'll have to get login stuff to get to work. And this is the preview of the actual profile. Okay. Because we have the target, so we have everything. So at this point, we can see the actual preview of the profile. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and fix the form, and then once I can get logged in, and we can get, and I can get then we can get some info in here and see it for sure. Because I think if I add a display name, do we see anything here? It is not well, if I quit randomly, if I actually typed in things that was worthwhile. There we go. So we do see the preview. This is cool. So this isn't just a bio preview at that point. It's literally an entire profile preview. That's awesome. So this is a little bit misleading. Let's definitely change this to have the appropriate label. Oh, hey Chad, how's it going? Welcome to the crazy front end. Label and label. This is definitely the bio. And give it an ID. We like that. ID bio. 4 equals bio. Bio. And that, we're going to also make this, because the likelihood, like if we look at this field, this is really small. And the likelihood of people only having 1 or 2 lines in their bio is kind of slim. So we're going to give it some rows. Let's give it about 10. Let's see what that looks like. The other way you can do that is via CSS. All right, now we've actually got some height to it. We can actually see what we're doing. Hey Chris, what's the max length you actually want in your bio, that you have in your bio? Because one of the things I really like to do in the cases of text areas like that, to give the users, because an email address, it's their email address, right? But this, they could write you, 1 paragraph, or you're 99% sure it's unlimited. Okay. Would you like there to be a limit? I mean, you'll still have to enforce it on your side. Yeah, what would you like that limit to be? You don't care. Okay. Well, we'll make it pretty large, but not War and Peace large. How's that? So what we're going to do is we're going to create a hint. It's a varchar max in the DB. I don't know what that means. Div class 2 billion characters. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I don't think anybody needs to have a bio that long. Div class equals hint. And what we're going to do there is we're going to add, I'm so used to Angular. We're not doing, that's not how that works. What we're going to do is we're going to say let's say we give it a max of like 5,000 characters, right? Even with the, even with the markdown and everything, your bio's pretty darn long if you've got 5,000 characters. I'm going to do a max length here. Max length. And so what we're going to want to do is basically show what the input data, you know, how much data they have in here. We're going to go ahead and pluck that in so that you're either going to get, so as they start typing, right now I'm going to do a fixed 0. But if when they start typing, it starts counting, you know, like Twitter does, right? It tells you how many characters you have left. We're going to do that. So in order to do that, what we need to do is we need to do some JavaScript. And it's been a very long time since I've done this outside of Angular. So what I may do is we might save this little functionality for a different stream where I actually look up how to do it. I mean, it's going to be a get by ID, then get the number of characters and shove it in. But there's probably better ways and worse ways to do it, and I don't remember what that is off the top of my head, so we'll deal with that on a different stream once I've reviewed how to do it in vanilla JavaScript. From an accessibility standpoint, what we do want to do is now this is going to describe what is going on in here, right? So what we want to do is have in, not only do we have the for and our ID, right? So this is saying, this is the label for this. And this is, well, now we're going to add some ARIA to explain that this gives us extra information about this. So we're going to say that text area is ARIA described by, and now we're going to say, we're going to give this guy an ID of bio, let's call it bio hint. And it's going to be described by bio hint. Then we have our preview. So instead of bio preview, I'm going to say that speaker profile preview, because it's all of the things, right? We've got, if I start typing like in here and I move on, earlier that was working. How about Twitter? At Twitter. That was working. There we go. And my blog, I don't really have one. I mean, I have a link to it, but blog, there we go. So that all works. Cool. Okay. So what we're gonna do, so now, did I not refresh? There we go. Speaker profile preview. Perfect. All right. Let's go back to here. Let's put some icons, especially for Twitter and such. So for Twitter, that should be the @ I think. Let's find out. Profile.js, control find Twitter. Twitter, self Twitter, Twitter, return plus raw substring. Yeah. So we're doing without the @, right? Because we are taking the thing, we're adding twitter.com, and we're taking the raw substring. And I don't think we're yoinking the at anywhere. Let's do search for at. No, we are not. For Twitter, there's a hint to what it's wanting. So often I get so many different versions of Twitter addresses. Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. It may be on my side if I do it at all. All right, so what we're gonna do with the Twitter is we're going to, and we'll adjust the JavaScript accordingly. Based on, I know that the URL will take the at though. Okay. So what we're going to specifically do for Twitter, and we'll add validation. We're going to say that we want to take, and we'll make it easy for users too. So we're going to say, where's Twitter? There's Twitter. We're going to give them a hint. Div ID equals Twitter hint. And aria described by equals Twitter hint. And then we're going to say we want your profile. We want the at profile. Okay. So now if I save that, we're going to make this a little nicer. So for Twitter, we're going to create a profile CSS really quick. Where's all our CSS? New file. Profile.css. Because this only really matters in the profile. And then we got a link to it. That is a syntax I never actually write from scratch, so we're going to be looking it up. I'm going to look at the head, because it's probably got one. Oh look, it's got plenty. And we're going to steal one. Copy. And go shove it in here. Except we don't want styles sidebar, we want styles profile. There we go. Okay. Now we're going to say that Twitter, say the input dot, do we have a dot Twitter? Let's see, input dot, no, there's no, there it is. Let's give it a class. Class equals Twitter, okay. Input dot Twitter, margin bottom 0, and then we're going to say hint is going to be a, and that one actually can go in the styles, in the main styles file, because that's going to be true no matter where we are. Let's go ahead and put it with our form stuff, because that's usually where we're going to use it. I'm actually going to put a comment here. This is where our forms begin. Wrong type of comment. Wrong language. There we go. There we go. Dot hint. Text online right. Font style italic. That should be a little bit nicer, except it's not. Why? Oh, because I didn't save that. I'll start with that too. That worked, but Our hint is not hinted. Why is our hint not hinted? I did not give it a class hint. That's not helpful. There we go. Now that we have a class hint, we have an at hint. And we have our hint down here. For Twitter, yeah, we want the at profile. And this is a use case where I would go ahead and also add, if they don't, also add a placeholder. So placeholder equals at, what is it, at handle, maybe? Handle, yeah, handle. That will give you the, there we go. And now we can write an actual pattern validation based off of that. This is where we get into the fun regex. So a lot of times when I'm doing regex, I'll use regex 101. I love that site. Make sure you're on JavaScript. There are various other ones. So like right now we're on PHP. That's not what we want. I want the JavaScript version. And what we are going to say is we want a username. We want that to work, right? We want at user123 to work. We don't want https://Twitter to work. We don't want some random garbage to work either, right? So here are a couple of use cases we definitely want to work versus not want to work. What we want, the first character is definitely going to be at, right? We definitely want that because that'll get rid of all of our other stuff. And we definitely want to make sure that our at is only there once. Hi Ray, how's it going? Welcome to the chat and welcome to the stream. And so we definitely want to make sure that the at is only there once. And then after that, they can kind of type whatever. I don't think, other than white space, I don't think that Twitter has any sort of particular limitation as to the characters other than maybe an other at. So the characters are going to essentially be anything, let's say, anything that is a non-white space character. Oh, you actually think we don't want the at. Well, what we can do, because people aren't used to that, I think what we'll do is we'll require the at and then strip it. Because that way we can strip it in the JavaScript before submitting it. Because I think the most other sites like take the at. So what we're going to do is we can go one of two ways. We can get the choose to have them give us the for URL, which most people don't know anyway, or have them go ahead and give us the at and strip it, which I think that for convention purposes, I'm going to have them give us the at and we'll strip it. So that people are used to that. I'm just thinking of the UX side of it and the user interaction side of it. And it's really easy to strip an at. I remember we ran into a bug where the DB column in the max length of the Twitter name, but someone crashed because without the at, they were at max length. So with the at, it did a DB overflow. Okay, so what's your max length, right? Because we can actually also include that in the input. I can cap the number of characters. We can actually find out. I don't know if Twitter itself has max length. Because I can do on the Twitter, Tony says 50. Max length is 15 characters, which is the Twitter limitation. Okay, so what we're going to say is with the at, their max length is 15. Nope, 15. Google failed me. 15. Okay, so because here's what we're going to do instead. We'll make this super simple. Actually, we'll make it even simpler. Instead of a hint, we're still going to need that regex. But what we're going to do, we'll make this fancy. I'm going to say div class equals Twitter container. Span at. And we are going to max length the 15. There we go. Okay. So this gives us that. That is really loud. Okay. There we go. So now we have an at in the handle. What we're going to do is we're going to take out the at on the handle. We're going, and now we're going to style this. So we do have a profile CSS right here. I'm going to do a .Twitter container display flex justify content. No, justify content we don't care right now because we're just going to flex start. Gap 0, align items. That's what I'm looking for. Align items center. All right. So that puts our at right here. Now we're going to make a box around the at. So how high is this? This is, let's look at the computed, 14. What kind of padding did I put on that? Oh, I used EXs, didn't I? I did use EXs. Padding. Padding top, padding bottom. I did use EXs. Okay. Oh, but we're flexed. It doesn't matter. Okay, we're going to do... We do want the padding left and right, though. So in the Twitter container, we have that span padding 0, 2 rem maybe. That may be a little wide. Yeah, it's very wide. 1 rem. 1 rem. Now the thing with that span right now, Control Save, Control Shift R. The thing with that span right now, if I give it a border to make it, you know, to do kind of the bootstrappy thing, what'll happen is because I have an, it's gonna, you'll see it only takes, it's not gonna do the thing that you think it's gonna do. Let's do, yellow is really hard to see. Let's do red. There you go. So right now what I really want, in order to have them aligned, right, I had to do an align middle, but what I really want is this box to be the same size as this input, right? So am I actually going to nest the span inside of a span to get that effect? Actually, I'm just going to make this a div. Makes more sense. And that way the flex will take care of making it as big as the... So what we're going to do now is we're going to do, instead of align center, we're going to not align, which will default to stretch. So the Twitter container is going to take that and align it, and it's going to stretch it. And now if I put that on the div, and that div gets display flexed align center, that will place the at in the middle of the box. It will place the at in the middle of the box. Why did it not place the at in the middle of the box? Let's find out. So we are there. Where's my div? Did I not save my div? I did not save my changes. If we save, first we save, then we refresh. It will place my at the middle of the box. Funny how that works. First we save, then we refresh. It just magically works. Funny. And now we can give it a little bit of a background. So I'm going to take that blue that we use on our border, which we'd like, on the actual div itself, right? because the div is what's stretched. The span is just there to center the at in the middle. The div itself is what's spanned. If we take a look at that a little bit closer, here's our div, right? The div is what takes the entire height. The span is just in the middle. So what we want to do is put the background on the div. And so I can do a background of, what variables do we have? Let's see. Yeah. What variables we have? We can use that border color. We don't have a disabled. We can do that neutral color. I like that. Let's do that. I'm going to use a var neutral. Neutral. And this is why, my friends, I keep spell check in my IDs. I know it sounds weird, but spell check has saved my bacon way too many times. Okay, so now the next thing we're going to want to do is get those corners, because right now, if I zoom into this a little bit, we can see that we have this corner adding here, which we know, and then the square, and then these aren't rounded, and that's not cool. So I'm going to go ahead and round this side, and we're going to square up this side so it comes and butts up against our square. And now it's very clear that you have your at, you type in your handle, we can validate for you didn't put the HTTP or the at, so your database is fine, we have a max at 15, and we're all good to go. So UI-wise, it's very clear to the user what in the world they're putting in, and yet it fixes the validation and the simplicity on the code side as well. So this solution, I think, will serve both sides well and be good. So now we need to fix our corners. So let's do that. So this guy, that's our outer div, right? Well, let's continue messing with that first. We've got the container, we've got the padding, so we need a border radius. And so border radius is kind of cool because just like padding or margin where you can do the 4 numbers and it goes around the square, border radius works the same way. We can just put 4 numbers and it'll handle each corner. The thing is, it starts on the top left hand corner and goes all the way around clockwise. So if we think of where we're starting, so this one needs to be curved. Excuse me. This one needs to be curved. This one needs to be straight, straight, and then curved. So we're going to do curved, straight, straight, curved. Now let me check with, let me look up our input, make sure that we're using the same curve, because that would be weird. Input, do we have border radius 4px? Cool. So that should curve our first guy. There we go. So now we're curved. You can see curve, straight, straight, curve. This guy, we need to do straight, curve, curve, straight. So inside of our input, our Twitter container, right? We have our Twitter container. Let me close some things. There we go. Our input is right here with the Twitter container. So we're going to do the Twitter container input border radius. I don't remember what we said. We said straight, curve, curve, straight. So straight, curve, curve, straight. Or, you know, pointy, whatever, whichever way you want to look at it. So now we have our at butted up to here. We can even make this bold, which I think would be kind of nice. Cool. Sweet. And now we have a nice Twitter handle. Close that. Go back to a normal zoom. And so that will make it without, we still need to, we need to add some margin underneath there. So under our input, styles, input, we have a margin bottom of 1 rem. So under our Twitter container right here, do a margin bottom 1 rem. Voila. So we have Twitter, website, blog, and now it's really, now it's very sensical and it makes a lot of sense what we have here. The last thing I would do to make it extra, because right now when I see it with the @ handle, it makes sense, okay, you want my handle. But once I start typing, it doesn't make quite as much sense. So I'm going to still add a verbal hint underneath that says input. There, so it's going to be under our placeholder over here. We're going to do a div class equals hint. Where's our, oh, well, there we go. So we're going to do a hint ID equals Twitter hint. Please include Twitter handle without, and we're going to make this bold, strong, without, and I actually mean strong and not the B tag. B tag is gone bye-bye. Without being, include Twitter handle without the, what is that called? The @ without the, does that have an actual name? I think it's Aerobase or something like that. What is the name of glyph? It's got a name, mislead. Character names, what symbols and sign is called. Cool. Can we find the @ Control find. Now I'm curious. Yeah, that one. That's the one I want. The @ sign. Really? It's got another name than that. The commercial @ glyph. No, there's a fancy name for that. I disbelieve. Glyph name SVG. No, that's not helpful. I'll have to look at that because I thought it actually had a name like Aerobase or something like that. I know in French it's called arrobase, which doesn't help. But anywho, all right, back to this. No, I don't want to go to Twitter. Typography tangents. Without the @ Cool. So now include Twitter handle without the @. And then what we're going to do is, that margin we just added? Yeah, we're going to take it off again. So we want that to be gone. We don't need that anymore. There we go. So now we have instructions. We have an input field that is nice and clear as to what there is being expected, and instructions on what to do. So I think we're in really good shape for Twitter. What I'm going to do is, it's getting to right about that time, so I'm going to stop here, and then we'll start next time. We can worry about actually laying out the preview and making sure that we get all of that validation in there so that we can properly give hints to the users as to what is, if there is something not validating correctly, that they're getting informed as to what it is before they try to submit, and actually get a submit button in the box. So let's go ahead, basically move these buttons over with the form. So I think that's where we're going to stop for today. I hope y'all enjoyed, and I will see y'all. Well, next week it's Thanksgiving, so I haven't decided yet, but we may skip next week and then go the week after. If I don't see you next week, happy Turkey Day for those in the United States, and have a really good rest of your week. Bye, everybody.